Hello everybody and welcome to Transcending Reviews, back with another test disc review and some more Japanese deep dive. I love me some Japanese cinema for Third Window Films on the 25th of May 2026. So very soon, guys, we have Transcending Dimensions, a double bill release featuring two films included: Transitional Dimensions 2025, including the Blood of a Reborn, also included as a secondary disc, alongside three short films have been combined into one little feature short, essentially about an hour-long length, with some new special features included, with audio commentary and a video essay talking about this very unique little series that this director has done. From director Toshiaki Toyoda, which has done this kind of resurrection / wolf mountain series, a collection of spiritualistic, religion versus science, transcendence, very broad, very big, dreamy, spiritual, self awakening kind of movies that are both entertaining and quite artistic and spiritually quite awakening for a viewer who likes this type of material. And Transition Dimensions is the one we're talking about for today, alongside the short films and the special features. I will be talking about the Blood of a Reborn on the secondary follow-up video. Now, with the director Toshiaki Toyoda, it's been on my kind of watch list for quite some time. He's a kind of a modern, late 2000s, still working, Japanese director. One that's kind of been in the back of my mind to check out for quite some time, even to the point where I did pick up Third Window's original release of his double bill kind of collection there. So Hanging Gardens, you got a series of short films there, including I Am Flash. Really great addition, which I've just not got around to watching, and that is the typical kind of curse of being a collector or wanting to kind of check out everything but not having enough time, and something that I've kind of trying to be better at in terms of my Hong Kong and Japanese collection is trying to take a step back, try and watch these films, and sometimes the mood has to strike in the right way or the right inspiration to check out that director, or the right push, or be in the right kind of mindset. Sometimes watching these kind of films too early can make you not value them, or maybe you don't get what they're trying to go for, or you maybe don't understand the wider scope in terms of the Japanese kind of genre in the cinema. And now seeing more artistic, modern expression, still really very vibrant, very clear, decisive vision. Being a director which has had a really fascinating career, especially talked about within the special features, I definitely want to dive into his films and to see what he's all about. And coming at it such a late kind of period, definitely is a not what I was expecting going in type of movie, and I definitely will be checking out more of this director very soon. But for today's video, let's talk about the Resurrection of the Wolf, or the Wolf Mountain series, if I'm not mistaken. A series of collection of ideas, starting with the short films he did, which on this edition, which I'll talk about immediately, is put together as an hour-long kind of sort of mini feature short film, three individual ones called I Am Here, I Am Alive, final part being Resolve, and coming together as Such Is the Person I Wish to Be, as a kind of collection of all three short films put together as an hour-long kind of mini short, I suppose. Very artistic, very expressive, very dreamlike, very raw. It's very difficult to kind of describe them, and I think I will leave the majority of the interpretation of that for you as a viewer if you check out this edition. Definitely worth checking out maybe pre-watching Transitional Dimensions, because it does give you a little bit of a kind of precursor to kind of what that film is, where I think the main feature is a bit more kind of accessible for the most part. I think, it kind of leans you in the right way with a simple story, and then it gets more kind of wilder and more dreamier and more kind of bigger, wider concepts as the film goes along, and has some great stuff in there, which I'll get into soon. But I think these three short films put together, I think were excellent. I thought they were really strong. He's definitely going through something in terms of that director. He's definitely trying to say something kind of bigger and bolder about spiritualism, about religion, science, about identity, about being in inner peace with yourself. And being the fact the director in real life did get blacklisted from Japan, being the fact that he smoked marijuana. This was before, I think, Hanging Gardens came out, I think in 2016, and he also got some criminal charges from a old World War II kind of pistol that his family had, and is an heirloom from World War II, of course. So the director's definitely been through quite a bit. He started off quite strong in terms of, you know, his filmography, go, 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 and then kind of got cut short, came back many, many years later, and obviously had a different perspective on things and wanted to tell very different types of stories and bring a bit of yourself into the properties, into these characters, into the world, into the material that you're kind of presenting for a viewer to watch. It's almost like a looking glass into that director. You know, it necessarily has to be, you know, pouring your heart and soul into it, but I do think there has to be some form of a point, has to be some form of a expression, a vision, something that you want to communicate to the receiver on the other end. And I think with these short films, with the feature included, for this kind of Wolf Mountain series he's kind of put together, I think is really, really excellent. And I think it's something that I think I need to watch more. I definitely need a second viewing on the short and on the film itself, because it is very difficult to kind of dial it down or kind of oversimplify it. And I don't want to take away some of the value. So yeah, I don't want to say much more than that. If you do want to check out these short films, I do believe they're actually on YouTube for free. So if you do want to check them out, go and find them, or check them out as part of a feature kind of hour-long piece, part of this edition from For Windows. Now, in terms of the feature film itself, Transition Dimensions, released in 2025, was quite a trip, not to overstate it. What an interesting movie, and an interesting one to start my journey on this director off the bat, and knowing what I know a bit more in terms of the special features we'll get into. I thought this was really fun, and I really want to check it out again to kind of get more out of it and to kind of understand some of the bigger, larger concepts. Essentially starts off as a simple premise. You've got a cult which is basically selling this idea of you can transcend into another form of plane, another dimension. Your power can reach far beyond. And it starts off a bit kind of like, always this guy a bit of a quack kind of thing. You've got this kind of cult leader, and you've got essentially a hitman that is infiltrated, who is observing what he's doing, essentially, in terms of the speeches, in terms of the rituals. He's doing things with his hands, and he wants a sacrifice, and he puts these kind of little fingers in jars, and these fingers will basically connect your body and soul to the other realm, to the other dimension, selling a product, essentially. Some people resist this. Some people really don't like this kind of, you know, blasphemous kind of vision, and he's quite an eccentric in terms of this kind of cult leader. The actor who plays the actual cult leader in this one is Junior Chihara, which has been involved in this director's kind of filmography from the very beginning with Porn Star, I believe, and Nine Souls, and there's quite a few movies he's been involved with, and quite a expressive, very kind of, you know, creepy but controlling kind of character he plays. Someone who is super confident with his kind of his body, but has such a unique kind of expressions that really gives off kind of like, you know, you're in danger kind of vibe. And he has some interesting kind of sequences, bigger themes that play here. And it turns out when he goes up to confront him and basically goes up to kind of shoot him in the face, he has abilities. And it's really interesting. It's such a simple idea in terms of having facial expression versus hand gestures, and with the correct kind of Foley and sound work, makes it quite terrifying. And he definitely plays with audio quite well. I definitely would say this director reminds me a lot of David Lynch's kind of style in terms of how he manipulates and how he uses audio, Foley work to create the kind of tension the film is going for, and having a very kind of unsettling kind of modern punk kind of, you know, scoring as well, which is kind of jarring and kind of strange. It very much gives you a very unsettling kind of feel from the get-go, and the fact that the simple kind of gestures of just like hand movements and like flickering and things like that can be so effective and so, ooh, this is cool. People with abilities. The film does go along, the hitman character just trying to assassinate him. The occult leader basically disarms him and gives him abilities himself, gives him this kind of shell, this kind of flute shell, and basically says, I'm going to basically make you my prodigy, essentially. Taps into his kind of potential, gives him abilities, or unlocks the abilities for him, and gives him this kind of, you know, shell kind of flute, and kind of unlocks something in him, and he's trying to experiment with this ability, and he gets assigned to take out someone else in the film as it goes along. And the reason the woman has assigned this hitman to this cult is a missing monk called Rusuke, who's basically gone missing. You know, he's introduced at the start of the film on the spaceship. He's playing with this kind of, shell flute, as mentioned before, and he comes into it in the second half of the film. He wakens up from this facility, and essentially he has transcended into another plane of existence, essentially. And there is some whopper of a concept here, and there's some big ideas, which I may not be wrong. I think the good thing about this second half, it introduces you to the entertainment, simple premise, the hook, I would say, at the first kind of like 35 minutes of the film. And then it gets weird, it gets dreamy, it starts to express bigger concepts, as always talked about within the short films, this idea of religion versus science, and this idea that this facility is studying him because he has transcended, he has gone to another plane of existence, and there is some self kind of internal kind of battles in terms of his perspective and how he deals with some of the other characters in the film. And there's some kind of confrontational kind of dual abilities between him, the cult leader, and the hitman character, either with the film as it goes along, or you're kind of checking out and you're not enjoying what the film ultimately is saying. It's not a traditional type of structure in terms of its narrative. It doesn't have a traditional type of ending. It doesn't have the typical good guys and bad guys, even though it kind of just started that way a little bit initially from the offset. I do think it goes places. I think it's definitely one for a conversational piece and for repeated revisits. And as I mentioned before in the channel, there are movies that are just pure entertainment, and there are movies that offer a little bit of challenge, a little bit of research. And there's some movies that definitely want to make you think, definitely want to make you feel, definitely want to invest in what's going on. And if you're clicking in the right way in terms of this material, I think you're going to have a really good time, especially with the short films included. In terms of special features, we get a brand new video essay by Peter Golaski, which is a really great kind of like, I think 15-minute kind of extra, talking about the film and the kind of the Wolf Mountain series with the short films included. Talks about some of his filmography in terms of his background, in terms of the director, and how this stacks up at this point in terms of his kind of career. And it's a really good, insightful kind of extra that kind of paints the way to kind of what you've experienced, what you've watched prior with those short films, and the feature film itself gives you a little bit more kind of context of what's going on within the director's life, personal life, what he was thinking while making these kind of short films, being the fact they were originally shorts on YouTube for free and then turning into a feature film down to popularity. And I think he offers some really good kind of grounded kind of ideas to make you think about as you watch the films, maybe on a second viewing or potentially a third or fourth. Also included, of course, is the 3 short films. As mentioned, you get a teaser trailer, and then you get an audio commentary from the director himself, talking about a lot of the locations and the shots and some of the ideas. And really good, really strong kind of from the director himself, how he got inspired, what his thinking process was. And I think it was a really good, insightful, extra piece in terms of what was going on in terms of the feature film. So yeah, all around a really compelling, a really striking film in terms of the feature and the short films, and the extra special features definitely back up more information in terms of what he's trying to go for and what he wants you to think about as you watch these movies. Highly recommend, and definitely worth a blind buy. If you're not too sure about the director, maybe check out some of his earlier films. Third Window Films have been absolutely killing it recently in terms of their releases and providing and offering films which you would never get a chance to see outside of Japan. Pick up this release, see what you think on the 25th of May. And for the second video coming up soon, I'll be talking about the Blood of a Reborn as the part 2 video. So what are your thoughts and impressions on the film and the short films? Please comment down below. So in time, guys, and for reviews, sign out.